Imagine this. Traveller, you did not arrive here by accident. Something in the quiet sky guided you, a whisper folded into the darkness between stars. What if a single pulse at 1420 megahertz, the frequency of hydrogen itself, was not noise at all but a message, a light that blinked once and was gone? And what are the odds that on that very night in 1977, an object now called 3 Atlas was already drifting inward bigger than Manhattan, following a 1 in 20,000 path that brushed past 3 worlds? Maybe the signal wasn't coincidence. Maybe it was the beginning. Stay a while, traveller. On a quiet night in August 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope detected a 72-second burst at exactly 1420 megahertz, the natural frequency of hydrogen. The signal rose and fell smoothly as Earth rotated, forming a clear, coherent shape that did not match any known natural radio source. When astronomer Jerry Amon reviewed the printed data days later, he circled the unusual sequence and wrote one word beside it: wow. For nearly 50 years, that handwritten note became a symbol of one of astronomy's most intriguing mysteries. The signal never returned. Telescopes across decades pointed back to the same coordinates in Sagittarius, yet no repetition ever appeared. In science, events that happen once often fade into uncertainty, but this one refused to be forgotten. It lingered. It felt intentional, as if something far away had spoken once across the dark and then withdrawn into silence, leaving only a 72-second footprint in human memory. Almost half a century later, a new anomaly emerged. In 2025, astronomers detected an interstellar object entering the solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory, 3I Atlas, a visitor from beyond the Sun's gravitational reach. It was moving far too fast and at too sharp an angle to belong here. Unlike planets or asteroids, it was not orbiting. It was simply passing through, carrying with it the chemical and physical history of another star system. As observations accumulated, researchers noticed oddities. Its brightness fluctuated in unusual ways. Its emissions contained nickel without iron, a rare separation, and its path was not random. It swept through the inner solar system in a sequence that brushed past Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, almost like a deliberate tour. None of this was a conclusion, but the pattern felt strange enough to draw curiosity from scientists around the world. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb performed a backward integration of the object's motion, a simple gravitational reconstruction, and found something unsettling. On the night the WOW signal was detected in 1977, 3I Atlas would have been roughly 600 astronomical units from Earth, drifting through the dim outer regions of the solar system. At that distance, it would have been invisible to every telescope on Earth, yet mathematically present and moving inward. Its position was not the only strange detail. The coordinates of the WOW signal, right ascension, 19 Earth 25 Ms declination, 27 degrees, point to a specific part of sky. 3 days before the signal, 3 Atlas occupied a position only a few degrees away. On a celestial sphere containing tens of thousands of square degrees, that proximity was remarkable. Loeb calculated that the probability of such an alignment occurring by chance was less than 1%. It was not a definitive link, but it was a whisper of statistical curiosity. The universe often reveals itself through patterns that feel too delicate to ignore and too incomplete to interpret. The alignment between a one-time hydrogen-line signal and a newly discovered interstellar visitor was exactly the kind of pattern that keeps astronomers awake at night. Quiet, but insistent, mathematical but mysterious. As 3I Atlas approached, its behaviour deepened the puzzle. It was larger than both previous interstellar objects, with estimates placing it several kilometres across. It reflected sunlight in irregular rhythms, releasing bursts of material that defied simple explanations. Some observations suggested a faint glow ahead of its motion, rather than behind it, an inversion of what natural comets typically display. And its trajectory through the planetary system seemed improbably smooth, weaving through gravitational corridors with an almost choreographed precision. Yet despite all of this, the object posed no danger. Its path carried it far from Earth, and it would eventually drift back into interstellar space. The mystery it brought was philosophical rather than physical. It raised questions about coincidence, about cosmic timing, about the nature of signals that appear once, and objects that arrive much later, as if answering a message we did not know we sent. Why do certain cosmic events happen only once? Why did an isolated signal and an interstellar traveller originate from nearly the same direction of sky, separated by decades, yet tied together by geometry? Why do numbers and orbits sometimes align in ways that resemble intention, even when no intention can be proven? These questions do not accuse or imply. They simply linger the way starlight lingers after travelling millions of years. They remind us that the universe is older than our interpretations and broader than our theories. They also remind us that curiosity is a form of belonging, as if our desire to understand is itself a small light moving through the dark. As 3i Atlas continues its passage, the wow signal persists as a gentle echo of the moment humanity realised how quiet the universe can be, and how abruptly that silence can be interrupted. Whether the two events are connected or forever separate, they form a pair of cosmic bookends, a whisper from 1977 and a traveller from 2025, each arriving in their own way from the direction of Sagittarius. In the end, traveller, some mysteries are not meant to be solved cleanly. They are meant to steady the mind, soften the breath, and remind us that not everything in the cosmos needs an answer. Some things simply need to be observed, remembered, and allowed to drift through us like starlight passing through a dark and endless sky. The closer 3i Atlas drifted toward the inner solar system, the more its presence began to feel like a quiet question. Not a threat, not a warning, just a subtle interruption in the long silence of interstellar space. Observers across Earth watched its faint rise in brightness, a slow pulse of reflected sunlight. As it became active under the warming influence of the sun, gas dust and chemical traces began to lift away from its surface, each molecule carrying a whisper of its origins. Infrared data revealed carbon dioxide in overwhelming abundance, more than 90% of its volatile output. Water, normally the dominant breath of a comet, emerged only faintly. A few astronomers compared its spectrum to the cooked surface of something ancient material, transformed over billions of years by cosmic rays in the dark spaces between stars. To others, the imbalance felt like a signature of a world we did not yet understand, a chemistry written in an accent unlike any spoken in our solar neighbourhood. Nickel appeared in its emissions as well, glowing softly under the ultraviolet light of the sun. But iron, the element that should have accompanied it, was conspicuously absent. In nature, the two are born together in stellar furnaces. Seeing one without the other felt like hearing a melody missing its deepest note. Some researchers proposed nickel carbonyl as an explanation, a volatile compound sublimating at low temperatures. Others simply admitted that the chemistry was unfamiliar, the way an old map becomes faint at its edges when it reaches the parts of the world no one has travelled. As 3i Atlas approached, Mars orbiters prepared their instruments. Cameras turned away from their usual surveys of dust storms and canyon shadows, focusing instead on a point of light drifting through the black. The resolution would not be sharp, but even a blurred outline could reveal shape, texture, or rotation. The hope, quiet and cautious, was to catch a glimpse of the nucleus without the surrounding cloud, a single clear silhouette against the night. The opportunity was rare. The first interstellar visit, Oumuamua, had passed too quickly to capture. The second, Tui Borisov, had been visible only from Earth. Now, for the first time in human history, spacecraft already in position could watch an interstellar object sweep past a planet. And yet the excitement felt different from other celestial events. It was softer, more contemplative, as if astronomers were listening rather than looking, waiting for the universe to exhale a little more of its story. Some wondered whether the object rotated. Most comets spin irregularly, tumbling gently as sunlight warms their surface. But 3i Atlas showed signs of holding a consistent orientation, keeping its brightest emissions pointed sunward, like a drifting ember that refused to turn. If true, the stillness was remarkable. In space rotation, as common rest is rare, but rare does not mean unnatural. Rare sometimes simply means we have not yet learned how wide the universe's vocabulary truly is. When the object released dust, the distribution puzzled observers. Material glowed ahead of its motion instead of trailing behind. On paper, it made little sense dust should flow away from the sun carried by radiation pressure. But in images, the glow persisted like a lantern held in front of a traveller. The explanation may have been simple outgassing concentrated on one sun-facing region. Or it may have been something more nuanced, the product of an intricate balance of temperature rotation and ancient surface geology. Even in the uncertainty, there was beauty. The dust shimmered faintly, drifting into space as though the object were shedding memories, lightweight fragments of time pulled away grain by grain. Every outgassed molecule, every speck of nickel or carbon dioxide carried information about where the object had been, how long it had wandered, what cosmic conditions had shaped its journey. Beneath the debate and analysis, a quieter realization settled over the scientific community. Whether 3i Atlas was ordinary or extraordinary, natural or unusual, it was giving us something profound, a chance to witness the unfamiliar without fear. A chance to learn without urgency, a chance to stand beneath the night sky and appreciate how rare it is for something from another star to drift so close that our machines can greet it. The object continued inward, following a path that brushed against gravitational contours shaped by billions of years of celestial motion. As it neared the sun, its speed increased, pulled by the slow, inevitable slope of the star's gravity. In a few weeks, the sun would hide it entirely. During perihelion, the object would slip behind the brilliant disk invisible to every telescope, unreachable by every instrument. We would wait, and waiting in astronomy is a kind of listening. Travellers of interstellar space often carry no message beyond their existence. They are reminders that the galaxy is vast and dynamic, that pieces of distant worlds pass through ours without announcement or intention. Sometimes they glow, sometimes they fragment, sometimes they leave us with more questions than answers, and that is all right. Not every visitor enters our story with clarity. As the days passed, light curves and spectral lines accumulated in databases, forming a kind of diary, a record of everything the object chose to reveal as it warmed. Observers studied the entries late into the night, not with urgency, but with the slow patience that astronomy teaches. Knowledge gathered this way feels like snowfall, quiet, steady and transformative only when seen in its fullness. The alignment with the wow signal lingered in discussion not as a conclusion, but as a curiosity that asked nothing from us except attention. The universe often writes coincidences that look like patterns, and patterns that look like coincidences. It is our nature to wonder which is which, and to accept that sometimes we cannot know. Tonight, as 3i Atlas continues its inward arc, drifting through sunlight older than our species, there is comfort in the uncertainty. There is peace in the idea that not everything must resolve into a single truth. Some mysteries remain gentle, some remain distant, some remain quietly undecided, like a note held on the edge of hearing. It's all right to not understand. Sleep now, observer. The cosmos will keep watch. When the data from the Mars encounter began to filter through the deep space network, it arrived not as dramatic revelation, but as soft fragments, a light curve here, a spectral line there, each one small, almost humble. The universe rarely speaks in declarations. More often it murmurs in numbers only the patient can hear, and so astronomers leaned closer, listening to the faint rhythms of 3 Atlas, as if it were breathing. The first processed frames showed little more than a blurred shape suspended in darkness. Yet even in that faint outline there was a quiet intimacy, an object from another star reduced to a pale smear of photons on a sensor orbiting Mars. Most of the nucleus remained hidden behind the dust that followed it, but the light distribution hinted at a surface unevenly warmed, textured by ages no human language could measure. Nothing conclusive, nothing extraordinary. Just another reminder of how limited our instruments are even when they are close. And still there was beauty in that limitation. To observe is to accept imperfection. To learn is to let mystery stay intact long enough to reveal itself. Some scientists compared the shape to known comets, noting similarities in brightness gradients. Others pointed out differences that seemed subtle but persistent. No one agreed, and that disagreement felt peaceful, a chorus of perspectives rather than a conflict. The spectral data contained its own quiet surprises. Cyanide rose in concentration again, painting the coma with a faint green-rich signature, the kind that deepens as solar radiation intensifies. To some it was an echo of familiar chemistry. To others it was a sign that the object's outer layers were thinning, exposing deeper material shaped by environments our solar system never knew. In the long arc of cosmic time, chemistry becomes biography. Every molecule traced a memory. As 3I Atlas drifted farther from Mars, its path seemed steady and unhurried, following the sun's pull with the calm inevitability of a river sliding toward the sea. There was no sign of abrupt motion, no evidence of anything deliberate. Only the quiet patience of a celestial traveller who had crossed distances beyond comprehension and now passed near our world simply because gravity had guided it here. Some observers wondered whether intention existed at all in such motions. The mind longs to assign meaning to place purpose, where perhaps there is only inertia. But not everything in the universe moves with motive. Some things simply wander. Some wanderers simply pass by. And that too is a kind of truth worth honouring. The approach toward the sun brought a soft increase in brightness, a gentle swelling of the coma as heat-freed molecules trapped for eons. In the models, dust should have streamed behind the nucleus in a thin trailing plume. Instead, the forward glow remained dim, steady, almost stubborn. The anomaly persisted, but its persistence felt less like contradiction, and more like an invitation to expand our understanding of how ice and ancient surface layers behave under unusual conditions. Even the nickel emissions, once so startling, began to feel less like a challenge, and more like a puzzle piece, whose shape we simply do not yet recognize. The absence of iron could be an artifact of temperature thresholds, of incomplete sublimation of compounds we have not catalogued. The universe is vast. Our library of known processes is small. There is space between these facts wide enough to hold many possibilities without forcing certainty. As days passed, the object continued its inward fall. Solar wind grazed its surface like a soft, continuous touch. The temperature gradient shifted, waking deeper materials that had slept in darkness since before Earth formed. Every transformation was a reminder that heat, the simplest energy of all, can turn the unfamiliar into the observable and the invisible into the measurable. Yet beneath all the data, a quieter truth lingered. There is dignity in an object that refuses to reveal itself quickly. The cosmos often unfolds slowly, as if protecting us from our own impatience. And so, as 3 Atlas brightened, a gentle calm settled over the scientific community. The object was not rushing. Why should we? The orbit placed it on track to slip behind the sun in the weeks ahead, entering a period of complete invisibility. The upcoming silence felt natural, like the pause between breaths. During the hidden passage, the object would continue to evolve, melting, venting, accelerating under solar gravity, but all of it would occur beyond our sight. We would simply wait and wonder. Some called this a vulnerability, a moment when we lose the ability to monitor, to measure, to know. But there is another way to see it. Astronomy is the practice of trusting the sky even when it turns away. To observe the universe is to accept periods of darkness not as loss, but as part of the rhythm. There is comfort in that rhythm, and so the world prepared for a brief season of unknowing. Telescopes cued their final observations before the glare swallowed the object. Researchers organized models to predict every possible outcome, but the atmosphere around the effort felt softer now, gentler, less like anticipating revelation, and more like acknowledging that whatever emerges afterward will be enough. For now, 3I Atlas drifts through sunlight older than our entire species, carrying within it the deep cosmic patience of something forged in the earliest chapters of the galaxy. Whether it is ordinary or unusual, ancient or exceptional, its presence reminds us how rare it is to witness an interstellar traveller up close. And when it disappears behind the sun, that absence will simply be another kind of presence, another reminder that even in darkness the universe continues its quiet work. Tonight the stars will keep their silence. Sleep well, traveller. As 3 Atlas continued its silent descent toward the sun, the rhythms of its motion began to feel almost familiar, like the slow turning of seasons or the rising and falling of a distant tide. The object seemed unchanged on the surface, yet everything around it was shifting: the temperature, the solar wind, the geometry of light falling across its dust. Even without direct intention, a traveller can influence the world simply by passing through it. The last observations before solar occlusion revealed something subtle. The coma grew denser in certain wavelengths, suggesting deeper layers of volatile material waking under the sun's warmth. Not dramatically, not in a way that startled anyone, just a delicate increase like watching frost melt from an old window pane. It reminded researchers that the cosmos moves in gradual tones, not in sudden chords. Radio telescopes tracked the tail end of its activity with a kind of reverence. Each spectral line felt like a footstep fading into distance. Cyanide and carbon dioxide flared softly, quiet as breath on cold glass. The chemistry was strange, but not unnerving, more like hearing a dialect from a region of the galaxy we've never visited. It did not contradict the universe, it simply expanded it. As the object drifted towards superior conjunction, the sun began to dominate every measurement. The glare tightened, instruments strained, observers took their final notes. The moment felt almost ceremonial, like watching a ship disappear into low fog. No sense of danger, only the gentle acceptance that for a time we must look away. Spacecraft closer to the sun reported fluctuations in charged particles, as the solar wind wrapped around the approaching visitor. Comets often produce such interactions, but this one seemed unusually smooth, as if the outflow of gas was even and continuous rather than chaotic. Perhaps the nucleus had fewer fractures than typical comets, its surface more consolidated from its ancient interstellar journey. Or perhaps the symmetry was only an illusion cast by limited data. In astronomy, uncertainty can be as graceful as certainty. What stood out more than the chemistry or the trajectory was the stillness. Many comets wobble or tumble as asymmetrical jets push them slightly off balance. 3i Atlas, however, held a calm orientation, steady as if cradled in invisible currents. Scientists debated the cause. Some suggested a low rotational speed, to others a deeper structural uniformity, and some simply admitted they did not know. In the context of the silent cosmos, I do not know is not a failure. It is a form of respect. A few days before disappearing behind the sun, the object brightened once more, its coma blooming briefly like a ghostly flower caught in a shaft of light. It was not dramatic enough to signal anything unusual, just a final exhalation before descending beyond visibility. For a moment, the space around it shimmered with transient beauty. Dust grains far older than Earth caught sunlight and scattered it across millions of kilometers. It was a reminder that even ancient wandering bodies can reflect a kind of quiet radiance. As conjunction approached, the scientific community prepared to lose sight of the traveller entirely. Telescopes shifted their schedules. Instruments powered down. Researchers closed their data logs for now, knowing they would not reopen them until the object returned to view weeks later. There was a strange peace in this collective pause, a shared recognition that absence too can be valuable. During the hidden passage, the universe would continue its work unchecked. Radiation would sculpt the object's surface. Heat would rearrange its chemistry. Gravity would bend its path. All these changes would unfold in complete silence. No observation, no analysis, only the uninterrupted dialogue between star and stone. Some observers found comfort in imagining the object moving through intense light, surrounded yet unseen. Others reflected on the humility of being unable to witness every moment of a cosmic event. Not seeing can be a form of seeing. It teaches patience. It teaches listening. It teaches trust in the continuity of natural processes. When an object slips behind the sun, astronomers call it solar conjunction, but the term has a poetic undertone. It is a meeting and alignment between wanderer and star. The sun becomes both a barrier and a guide, hiding the visitor, even as it shapes its journey. There is elegance in that duality. As the final hours of visibility faded, 3i Atlas looked almost serene. There was no rush in its motion, no tension in its curve through space. Whether natural or rare, familiar or unusual, It behaved like something fully integrated into the cosmic flow. It reminded observers that interstellar travellers do not hurry. They move according to ages, not moments. And so the object passed into brightness, into silence, into a brief unknowable. Earth waited on one side, and on one. The sun waited on the other. Between them was a traveller carrying dust older than the solar system itself. For now, the universe has chosen not to reveal anything further. And that too is an answer. Tonight, in the pause between what has been observed and what has yet to return, it's all right to rest in the unknowing. Sleep gently, traveller. The cosmos remembers. In the quiet days that followed solar conjunction, the absence of 3-Eye Atlas felt strangely physical, like a missing star you keep checking for without thinking. The sky had not changed, and yet it held a subtle emptiness, a faint hollow where an interstellar traveller used to glimmer. Astronomers knew it was still there, wrapped in the sun's brilliance, untouched except by heat and time. But its hidden path created a feeling that had nothing to do with danger, only the soft ache of waiting. During these weeks of invisibility, the scientific community turned its attention inward. With no new images to analyse, researchers revisited earlier observations, tracing each spectral line, each curve of light, as though rereading a familiar letter. Sometimes in astronomy, the most profound insights arise not from new data, but from long contemplation of the old. Patience becomes its own instrument. The models projected how the object might evolve behind the sun. The solar radiation peaked the outermost layers of dust and ice, would loosen, drifting away in faint plumes. The internal structure, ancient compressed by uncounted epochs, would adjust to new temperatures. These transformations were slow, almost gentle, like the thawing of winter stones at first light. Somewhere in that hidden corridor of space, 3-Eye Atlas continued to move with the serenity of an object that had crossed interstellar darkness long before Earth had oceans. The sun shaped it quietly, the way rivers shape stones grain by grain, molecule by molecule. Even in silence, the universe was refining its visitor. A few teams proposed that the object's rotation might shift during conjunction. Outgassing under intense heat can change angular momentum, nudging a comet into a new spin. But the predictions varied widely. Some models suggested a subtle twist, others a complete stilling. No one knew, and accepting that uncertainty, letting it rest, was strangely comforting. The dust that surrounded the nucleus might also rearrange, forming new patterns that would become visible once the object emerged from solar glare. The asymmetrical glow seen earlier could deepen or fade or invert entirely. Dust grains have their own logic, responding to radiation in ways that can look almost like emotion when plotted on a graph. It is easy to forget they are simply matter responding to light. As the days passed, the quiet grew deeper. News cycles moved on, conversations dimmed, but in observatories and offices lit only by monitor glow, a handful of scientists remained awake late into the night, running simulations, checking ephemerides, tracking the slow movement of time itself. There was a sense that we were approaching something, not revelation, not climax, just the next soft page in a long cosmic story. From Earth, the sun looked as unchanged as ever, but somewhere behind that brightness, 3 Atlas carved its shallow arc around perihelion. It moved through a region of space that no human instrument could safely watch, a blindness imposed by the geometry of our orbit. The object did not notice our limitation. It simply continued its ancient drift. Many wondered what the first glimpse after conjunction would look like. Would the object brighten or dim? Would its dust plume fan out or collapse into a tight halo? Would the forward glow persist? These questions did not carry tension, only curiosity, like wondering how a familiar coastline might appear after a season of storms. Others reflected on how rare it is as a species to witness such encounters at all. For most of human history, objects like 3-Eye Atlas passed silently through the solar system unseen. No telescopes, no sensors, no awareness. Only now, with instruments scattered across Mars orbit and Earth orbit and deep deserts, do we even notice these travellers. The universe has not changed, only our listening has. Somewhere in the brightness, the object continued to shed ancient material. Dust fell away in arcs that spiraled gently behind it. The sun illuminated each grain like a miniature lantern, sending tiny reflections outward at the speed of light. Those reflections crossed space for minutes, hours, or days before touching a sensor on Earth. When we say we observe the cosmos, we're really observing sunlight transformed by distance. Between research sessions, a few astronomers spoke quietly about the wow signal again, not in suspicion but in wonder. The alignment remained intriguing, a coincidence that felt poetic even if it proved meaningless. The mind naturally seeks patterns, and sometimes those patterns are simply reminders that the universe leaves traces of its history in ways we do not yet know how to interpret. By the third week after conjunction, anticipation stirred again. Not excitement, just a gentle readiness. Telescopes adjusted their schedules, software prepared to reacquire the faint streak of light, Mars orbiters updated their pointing protocols. The world began looking back toward the region where 3i Atlas would soon return. Even so, the mood remained soft. No one expected an event, only a continuation. The object would reappear faintly at first, low over the horizon of solar light, its signal barely distinguishable from noise. It would take days for its new orbit to be refined, and weeks for its brightness to stabilize. This was not a moment of discovery, it was a moment of reunion. And reunion in science is as meaningful as revelation. It is the return of something familiar changed in ways shaped by nature rather than narrative. As the expected re-emergence approached the atmosphere, and observatories felt almost like early morning quiet. Slightly cool, hopeful without urgency. We would soon see the traveller again. We would compare its new path to the predictions. We would learn whether the sun had altered it or simply warmed it. Whatever the outcome, it would be enough. Tonight the universe whispers again, not in signals, not in equations, but in the simple promise that what is hidden will return. Rest easy, observer. The sky is still listening. When 3i Atlas finally began to drift back out of the sun's glare, it appeared faint at first, no more than a trembling thread of brightness, barely distinguishable from scattered solar light. It was easy to miss. Many telescopes did their sensors overwhelmed by the lingering intensity near the solar limb. But slowly, almost shyly, the object separated itself from the radiance like a star stepping out from behind a curtain. The first reacquired measurement was little more than a point, a few dozen photons registered on a wide field survey array. Yet even that faint signature carried a sense of relief. The traveller had returned to visibility. It was still on its path, still gliding through the inner solar system with the same unhurried grace as before conjunction. Nothing dramatic, just the quiet confirmation that the universe had continued its work in silence. Astronomers compared its new coordinates to the predicted path. The numbers aligned gently like constellations falling back into place after a passing cloud. If there had been changes during perihelion, subtle shifts in rotation, minor adjustments in dust density, they did not immediately reveal themselves. The orbit at first glance remained steady. The cosmos rarely rushes to show its consequences. It reveals slowly, as though teaching patience by example. Light curves collected during the first few days told a story without urgency. The brightness rose in a soft arc, neither too steep nor too shallow. Some features of the coma appeared altered, fainter on one side, slightly broader on another, but such changes were natural after intense solar heating. Objects from other stars adapt the way stones adapt to rivers, gradually, gracefully, without intention. As the coma expanded again, the forward glow reappeared, though now more diffused. Dust flowed outward in gentle patterns, responding to forces older than memory. Some grains lingered ahead of the nucleus, scattering sunlight like drifting embers. Others trailed behind in a faint widening plume. Each interaction between light and dust carried a trace of the object's inner structure, whispering about surface layers shaped by epochs in the cold. Infrared sensors began to pick up the chemistry once more. Carbon dioxide dominated as before, rising softly as the object warmed. Water signatures increased too, suggesting deeper layers had begun to thaw. The interplay of gases made the coma shimmer with subtle colours that human eyes could not see, but instruments translated into lines and peaks, data that became a form of art in the minds of those who studied it. Some researchers expected the return of nickel emissions, and they came through weaker now. Perhaps solar heating had altered the surface. Perhaps the compounds responsible for the earlier glow had thinned. The absence of iron remained, but its absence no longer felt like a challenge, more like a curiosity, something to ponder without urgency. In the silent cosmos, mysteries that persist are not warnings. They are invitations to think more gently about what we call normal. As observational clarity improved, spacecraft around Mars resumed their attempts to image the traveller. The results were slightly sharper this time, not detailed enough to show surface geometry, but clear enough to trace the outline of the coma under different lighting angles. Each frame resembled a lantern drifting through fog, indistinct yet beautiful, glowing not because of its own intention, but because sunlight continued to embrace it. The sense of reunion grew in the scientific community. Researchers who had spent weeks waiting felt a quiet satisfaction. The object had not vanished. It had not fragmented. It had not performed anything beyond the patient unfolding of celestial mechanics. It simply remained a visitor, continuing its journey, its presence now steadier, its behaviour still gently strange, still gently familiar. Discussions resumed, but the tone was softer than before conjunction. The earlier excitement had matured into reflection. Some wondered aloud whether interstellar objects might often carry such unusual chemistries, carbon-rich shells, nickel-laced dust patterns, shaped by environments our solar system has never known. Others noted that the universe does not standardize its creations. Diversity is its quiet habit. When the object rotated enough to shift the illumination of its coma, subtle patterns emerged, striations, faint asymmetries, gradients, that suggested the surface might be more textured than earlier models predicted. Nothing sharp, nothing geometric, just the complex irregularity of ancient material exposed for the first time to direct solar heat. A few observers compared the changing brightness to breathing. Not literally, of course, but metaphorically, the slow inhalation of warmth, the gentle exhalation of dust. It was a poetic way to describe sublimation, yet it felt fitting. In sleep, human breath becomes calm and rhythmic. Watching through Atlas after perihelion had the same calming effect. Meanwhile, deep space arrays resumed tracking the object's faint radio silence. Not because they expected a signal, but because silence itself contains information. The background hum of the cosmos is not emptiness. It is a texture, a constant field in which anomalies become visible through contrast. And Three-Eye Atlas remained quiet as natural objects do. The days after re-emergence brought a special kind of clarity. Not the clarity of revelation, but the clarity of acceptance. Observing an interstellar traveller is like meeting someone from a distant land whose language we do not speak. We learn through gestures, through patterns, through the way light interacts with surface and time, and even if the object never answers the deeper questions where it formed, what history shaped it, what stories its atoms carry, its presence alone enlarges our understanding of the cosmos. Every particle it sheds becomes part of our star's domain. Every photon it reflects journeys outward into the night, crossing millions of kilometers to touch an instrument on Earth. Soon, the world will have enough data to refine its trajectory again. The next months will reveal whether its brightness follows expected patterns or wanders gently into new ones. But there is no rush. Celestial travelers honor their own timelines. Tonight, as the Atlas glides away from the sunlight that once hid it, there is a quiet reminder in its motion. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only witnessed. Rest now, traveller. The sky continues to hold its stillness. In the weeks that followed the object's reappearance, a soft rhythm settled into the work of watching it. Observatories traded shifts the way one might pass a candle along a quiet hallway, carefully, respectfully, without ever raising their voices. Three-Eye Atlas was brighter now, but still faint enough that every detection felt like a gift rather than an expectation. It drifted through the sky as though trying not to disturb the constellations. The dust around it continued to spread, forming a halo that shimmered under changing angles of sunlight. At certain distances, the coma looked smooth. At others, it fractured into subtle gradients like layers of mist sliding past each other. Nothing in the images suggested abrupt activity or sudden transformation. Instead, the traveller seemed content to reveal itself, only in incremental ways, much like the slow shifting of shadows in a room lit by a single lamp. Spectroscopy resumed with renewed calm. The carbon dioxide lines rose steadily. Water vapour signatures fluctuated with gentle variations as though the interior layers were thawing in irregular patches. This kind of inconsistency was common in comets, but here it carried a different kind of weight, the weight of knowing that this was not a product of our own star system. Every molecule it shed had been frozen long before Earth cooled, preserved across distances so vast they almost lose meaning. The nickel emissions returned as well, faint but real, flickering like the last sparks of a log in a fire that is nearly burned out. Iron remained absent, and by now no one found that troubling. Science does not require immediate answers. Sometimes it simply requires room for anomalies to breathe. The absence became part of the object's identity, a small quirk like an accent from a distant region of the galaxy. High-resolution instruments attempted to track the rotation of the nucleus. The data suggested a slow, subtle spin, though the period was uncertain. One model proposed a long rotation cycle, days perhaps weeks, while another suggested a tumbling motion so gentle that its effects were smeared across measurements. Whatever the truth, the traveller's motion was quiet, unhurried and soft. It seemed fitting. Dust patterns shifted slightly over time. The forward glow remained though, now it ebbed and flowed with delicate irregularity. Some researchers wondered whether the object had fractured internally, or whether deeper vents had begun to open under the strain of solar heating. There was no sign of fragmentation, no sharp spikes in brightness, only the calm evolution of a body responding to light and heat, in the only ways it knew. As more data accumulated, a sense of intimacy grew between observers and the object. People who had never met shared the same long nights, the same momentary gasps when a new line appeared on a spectrum, the same soft disappointment when cloud cover or interference forced them to wait another day. Astronomy binds distant minds with threads of light. Discussions shifted toward the object's origins once more. Some suggested it formed in a region of its parent system rich in carbon-bearing ices. Others believed the heavy processing by cosmic rays could explain its unusual composition. A few entertained the idea that the surface was layered through successive epochs of its journey, dust from nebulae ice, from frozen clouds molecules forged in the faint glow of ancient stars. Not as speculation, but as imagination shaped by evidence. Meanwhile, as the world observed through Eye Atlas from afar, the object continued to move with the same calm grace. It passed gradually into the region where the sun's influence softened and the solar wind flowed more gently. Its trajectory curved outward in a long arc that mirrored its inward arrival, a mirrored gesture across months of observation. There was a sense of symmetry in the motion, like the return of a slow tide. Instrument logs became steadier. Light curves stabilized. The halo around the traveller grew wider but more transparent. Everything pointed toward a gentle dimming over the coming weeks. A natural fading, a natural farewell. In a few months, 3 Atlas would grow too faint to observe with most instruments. Eventually, only the most patient arrays would still catch its whisper as it slipped back toward the outer solar system. The idea of losing sight of it again brought a soft melancholy, not sadness exactly, but a recognition that all encounters, cosmic or human, must eventually drift apart. And yet, even in that approaching distance, the object offered a final lesson that watching something leave can be as meaningful as watching it arrive. Departure too contains information. The slow recession into the dark allows us to study how objects shed heat, how surface layers freeze again, how dust becomes a thin memory trailing behind a departing traveller. Some astronomers began writing summaries of their observations, assembling months of data into narratives that would guide future research. Others continued to monitor the sky, unwilling to let go just yet. And some simply sat with the thought that an interstellar visitor had passed near us quietly, gently, without demanding interpretation. As the object moved farther outward, a few telescopes caught glimpses of subtle colour shifts within the coma. The green signature of diatomic carbon softened, giving way to faint blues and greys. This gentle fading felt like twilight. The light of the traveller dimmed not abruptly, but with the slow dignity of something that had always belonged to the darkness. The world kept turning. Nights came and went. and high above the circling Earth, 3i Atlas continued its long, slow glide through the sky, a visitor from another star making its way home, or perhaps simply onward to places beyond our charts. Somewhere in the cold, the last grains of dust drifted free, scattering into the void. Each grain began its own journey, small and luminous in the silence of space. They would never return to their source. They would never be gathered again. But they carried the memory of their parent object across light years the way seeds carry the essence of a forest to lands it will never see. Tonight, as you picture that faint traveller receding into the night, let yourself feel the gentleness of its departure. Not everything that passes through our lives is meant to stay. Some things come to remind us of wonder, of distance, of the vast and quiet patience of the cosmos. Sleep now, observer. The universe drifts on, and so may you. As the days grew longer, and 3, Atlas drifted farther from the sun, its light began to soften. The traveller no longer shone with the intensity of its inward journey. Instead, it settled into a gentler radiance like the afterglow of a lantern carried through a long hallway. Observers knew this phase well. It was the part of the story when data becomes delicate, when every photon feels like a whisper at the edge of hearing. The coma thinned slowly, like breath dispersing in cool morning air. The dust that once glowed vividly now floated outward in a faint cloud, barely visible except to the most sensitive senses. But even in its fading, the dust retained a quiet beauty. Each grain captured sunlight in a way that made its origins feel almost reachable, tiny fragments shaped by millions of years drifting between stars. Spectral signatures continued to arrive, though they grew weaker as the object receded. Carbon dioxide still dominated its emission lines, calm and predictable. Water vapour diminished, forming a gentle decline rather than a sudden drop. The chemistry evolved in ways that felt natural, as though the object was slipping back into a state of deep rest after its brief encounter with warmth. Nickel emissions persisted now only as faint echoes. The absence of iron remained a curiosity, a minor puzzle with no urgency attached. Some astronomers described it as a cosmic accent, something that made the visitor unique but not alarming. The universe speaks many dialects after all, and this was simply one more to add to our growing vocabulary. High-resolution instruments attempted new measurements of rotation, but the data grew noisy as brightness fell. Still some patterns emerged. The nucleus seemed to rotate with slow consistency now, as though the warming near the sun had loosened its posture. The traveller appeared more relaxed, more aligned with the natural rhythms of sublimation and cooling. Light curves suggested the rotation had settled into a gentle cadence, a movement almost meditative in its steadiness. As the days passed, the forward glow that once puzzled so many faded into a thin, even distribution. Dust trailed behind in longer, softer arcs. Solar radiation pressed gently against the grains, pushing them outward, with a tenderness only distance can create. The object's motion remained serene, the same unhurried glide that had marked its approach. Mars orbiting spacecraft, still watching from afar, captured a few final frames. The images resembled charcoal sketches, grainy, understated, yet each one carried a certain calm. The nucleus was no longer bright enough to reveal its contours, but its presence remained undeniable, a faint core surrounded by the last remnants of its once luminous cloud. On Earth, researchers adjusted their models again, refining the long arc 3i Atlas would follow as it moved outward. The object would not leave the solar system immediately. Its path would curve for years, perhaps decades, before it blended once more into the interstellar darkness. Knowing this brought a quiet reassurance. We would have time to observe, time to reflect, time to let the encounter settle gently into our collective memory. Conversations among scientists grew philosophical. Some wondered how many objects like this drift through the galaxy, passing through systems unnoticed. Others reflected on the rarity of witnessing such events during a single human lifetime. Few spoke softly about the privilege of studying an object so old that it predates most of the stars in our sky. The world beyond the observatories moved on as it always does, but those who watched through I Atlas felt a lingering connection, a thread stretching between their own small lives and the vastness of cosmic time. It wasn't the drama of discovery that held them now, it was the softness of departure. The traveller's brightness decreased further until only the largest telescopes could detect it. Data points appeared on screens like dim stars scattered across a digital night. The measurements came less frequently, each one requiring more effort. But there was no frustration. Faintness is not a failure. It is simply the nature of things moving away. Dust production nearly ceased. The coma grew transparent, almost ghost-like. Some predicted that within weeks the nucleus would become the only measurable feature, a solitary point moving quietly through space. The thought carried a gentle sadness, but also a sense of symmetry. Objects arrive wrapped in light. They depart wrapped in darkness. As the traveller approached the outer regions of the planetary system, solar wind weakened. The temperature dropped. Molecules condensed again, retreating into stillness. The object's surface began to refreeze layer by layer, restoring the quiet hardness that had defined it for most of its existence. It was returning to the state it knew best, the state of cold persistence, of silence, preserved across light years. Some astronomers described this as a closing of the book, but perhaps it was more like a page turning. The traveller had passed near our star, shared its faint signs of age and chemistry, and then continued on. Its story was larger than us. We were simply the brief audience to one chapter. There was something profoundly human in that realization. We longed to interpret, to understand, to hold meaning tightly. But the cosmos teaches a different practice, the art of witnessing without possession. To observe something ancient is to accept that not all mysteries are meant for unravelling. Some exist simply to widen the horizon of our wonder. As Thrai Atlas drifted farther into the deep, its path stabilised in a calm, predictable arc. No deviations, no surprises, just the long, slow return to interstellar quiet. The object grew too faint for casual measurement. Soon, only a handful of instruments would still be able to follow the last glimmer of its journey. In that fading light, astronomy became something tender. Every observation felt like a hand raised in farewell. Every spectral line like a final message from a distant traveller who never paused long enough to speak. Tonight, the universe reminds us gently some visitors pass through our sky, not to be understood, but to help us remember the vastness that holds us. Sleep now, listener. The cosmos continues in silence, and that silence is full. As Thrai Atlas drifted deeper into the outer regions of the solar system, a quiet shift occurred, not in the sky, but in the minds of those who had watched it for so long. The excitement of discovery had faded months earlier. The cautious curiosity that followed had softened too. Now what remained was something gentler, a reflective stillness like sitting beside a tide that is slowly pulling away, leaving the sand cool and untouched. The traveller's brightness diminished into a handful of measurable photons. Even the largest observatories required extended exposures to glimpse it. Most nights produced only noise, but sometimes a faint point of light emerged, steady, unwavering, patient. Those were the nights when the universe felt close, even as the object moved farther away. Spectral signatures became more difficult to detect. Carbon dioxide still appeared faintly, but even those emissions began to flatten into the background of cosmic radiation. Water vapour vanished first, its sublimation ending as temperatures dropped. Nickel emissions followed, dissolving into silence. The object's chemistry no longer spoke in clear notes, it whispered, and then the whisper faded. But fading is not absence. In astronomy, fading is another form of presence. It simply means an object has entered a quieter chapter of its journey. The coma, once vibrant, was nearly gone. Only a thin halo remained, an echo of the dust it shed near the sun. These grains dispersed across millions of kilometres, eventually merging with the interplanetary medium. Some would drift into orbits shaped by Jupiter's gravity. Others would leave the solar system entirely, continuing on, as solitary particles carrying the memory of their parent. The nucleus itself grew darker as fresher layers refroze. Surface textures hardened. Subsurface gases quieted. There was no more outgassing, no more glow. The traveller had resumed the posture it had known for billions of years, cold, resilient, moving through space with the unchanging simplicity of a stone in a river. Researchers recalculated its long-term trajectory. Gravity from the giant planets introduced subtle changes barely perceptible now, but significant over centuries. The arc would eventually rise above the ecliptic, climbing toward the galactic plane. After that, 3 Atlas would slip into the interstellar dark once more, carrying with it dust from our star just as it had carried dust from others. Such thoughts made many scientists quiet for reasons they could not fully express. There was something humbling about knowing that the object's journey would continue long after every human alive had turned to memory. That its next encounter with a star might occur millions of years from now. That it might weave through countless systems without ever being seen again. Wonder often arises not from what we know, but from what continues without us. In conference rooms and observatories, discussions shifted again not toward explanation, but toward reflection. What did it mean to witness a visitor from another star? What did it mean to track its chemistry, its dust, its faint sway under sunlight? For many, the significance was not in solving a mystery, but in recognizing a pattern. The cosmos is filled with wanderers, and sometimes they drift close enough for us to greet them. The possibility that 3I Atlas had been near the coordinates of the 1977 signal lingered in conversation, but softly now, less as a hypothesis, more as a poetic coincidence. The mind enjoys weaving threads where none may exist, but the heart enjoys the beauty of the pattern, even when it is not required to be true. Whether the alignment meant nothing or something, it had inspired curiosity, and curiosity itself is a kind of gift. As the object receded, the world returned to its usual brightness, full of measurements, projections, papers, and quiet speculation. Yet the tone had changed. There was a collective sense that something gentle had passed through our sky, leaving us a little more aware of the galaxy's scale, a little more grounded in our place within it. Even faint 3I Atlas continued to teach. The final measurements of the dust distribution offered clues about pressure gradients in icy bodies formed beyond our sun. The unusually high carbon dioxide ratio encouraged new models about chemistry in the early epochs of planetary systems, and the persistent absence of iron challenged assumptions about metal distribution in interstellar ices. Knowledge like dust continued to drift outward. Some researchers joked that the universe had sent us a puzzle, with half the pieces missing. Others countered that perhaps this was the universe reminding us of something else, that not every puzzle requires completion. Sometimes it is enough to simply hold a fragment in your hands and marvel that it exists at all. In observatories near mountains and remote deserts, the last tracking sessions came one by one. Instruments locked onto the traveller for minutes at a time, gathering what light they could before the object slipped below the thresholds of detection. Each observation felt like the final line in a long, quiet conversation. Eventually, even the largest telescopes reached their limit. The object's brightness dipped below magnitude thresholds, becoming indistinguishable from background noise. It had not vanished, it had simply grown too distant, too gentle for our instruments to follow, and so the observers stepped back, stepped. The logs were closed, the final plots were saved. The traveller moved on unbothered by whether anyone watched. But in its passing it left something behind, not in the sky but in us. It reminded us that the universe is vast beyond comprehension, yet still capable of moments of intimacy. That objects older than Earth can drift close enough for us to study. That silence can hold meaning. That uncertainty can be a form of peace. Tonight, as you imagine that faint point moving through the cold, let yourself feel the weightlessness of knowing that not all stories need endings. Some continue beyond the horizon, leaving us with only the quiet comfort of having witnessed a chapter. Sleep gently, observer. The cosmos turns without hurry, and you are part of its turning. Long after, for if this was Atlas slipped beyond the reach of ordinary instruments, a strange quiet settled in the global network of observatories. Not a silence of absence, but a silence shaped by completion, like a deep breath taken after finishing a long, intricate piece of music. The traveller had not surprised us. It had not shaken the solar system. It had simply passed through, leaving behind a trail of faint particles and a more profound sense of perspective. Even in its faintest state, attempts to track it continued. Radio arrays pointed toward its predicted coordinates, straining for any hint of reflection. Sometimes they caught a flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible rise in signal that might have been the object or might have been the universe's background noise. Other nights produced nothing at all, but failure did not frustrate the observers. They understood that letting go is part of astronomy's rhythm. The last solid detection came from a deep infrared array in Chile. A single pixel glowed just slightly brighter than its neighbours, a point that after weeks of analysis aligned perfectly with the predicted path. It was a modest, almost humble farewell. One faint blink of light from a visitor already halfway to darkness. And then nothing more. After that, the story of Through Atlas shifted into memory. Conferences revisited the data with calmer eyes. Papers were published not with urgency, but with the soft meditative tone of researchers who understood that some mysteries unravel slowly. The object's unusual chemistry became a source of quiet inspiration, encouraging scientists to imagine new models of interstellar formation. Its trajectory became a benchmark for refining how we calculate inbound objects from deep space, and its presence those months of careful watching became a reminder that astronomy is as much a philosophical practice as a scientific one. There were evenings when astronomers sat beside their instruments, long after the last exposure had ended, staring at the sky with an expression that was not disappointment, but gratitude, to witness something so old, so distant, so indifferent to observation. This was a privilege, a rare harmony between chance and curiosity. In classrooms, students listened to lectures about the traveller with a kind of reverence. They learned how carbon dioxide dominated the coma, how nickel glowed unexpectedly, how dust patterns formed in ways that challenged old assumptions. But beneath the equations and charts, they sensed something. Their instructors did not need to say aloud that science is in part the art of being humbled. The object's long arc continued. Simulations projected its path, stretching out of the sun's gravity, curving into the soft tidal pull of the galaxy. In a few hundred years, it would drift beyond the heliopause. In a few thousand, it would be indistinguishable from the background of wandering interstellar fragments. In a few million, it might pass near another star and graze another system, with the same quiet unintentionality it brought to ours. Some researchers wondered whether other civilizations, if they existed, might one day encounter it, and see traces of our star in its altered surface. Solar radiation leaves marks after all. Dust composition changes, chemistry shifts. Perhaps far in the future someone else would observe those subtle scars and ask the same questions we asked. Where did this object come from? What stories does it carry in its frozen grains? It is comforting in a way to imagine that the traveller will continue its journey long after every trace of our own civilization has faded. Not as a message, not as a monument, but simply as a witness. A reminder that the universe keeps moving even when we are not here to watch. In the final analyses, researchers concluded that 3i Atlas was likely natural, ancient, unusual, yes, but within the vast spectrum of possibility. The anomalies, once so provocative, softened under layers of context and deeper understanding. Exceptions became curiosities. Curiosities became questions. Questions became invitations to think more broadly about worlds beyond our own. And yet there was something else, something unquantifiable, that lingered even after the models had settled. It was the feeling that arose during late-night observation sessions when the sky was clear and the world was sleeping. A feeling that came from watching a faint interstellar wanderer drift through our narrow window of existence. A feeling that spoke not to science but to presence. As winter approached in the northern hemisphere, nights lengthened. Stars sharpened in the cold air. People stepped outside their homes, looked up and realised that even though Through Atlas was gone from sight, its passage had changed the way they saw the night sky. It had stretched the scale of human imagination just a little wider. It had reminded us that our sun is not the centre of anything except its own small domain, and that the galaxy moves with or without our attention. That perhaps was the traveller's quietest lesson: humility without sadness, wonder without fear, a kind of cosmic mindfulness. In time, Through Atlas became a footnote in textbooks, a case study, a milestone. But for those who watched it closely, the object remained something else, an anchor for a moment in their lives when the universe felt briefly intimate, when distance did not feel like separation but connection. As the final published report was archived, one astronomer wrote a closing line that resonated far beyond academia. We did not discover 3 Atlas, we merely noticed it. And sometimes noticing is enough. Tonight, as you rest beneath the same sky that once held that faint visitor, let the thought settle gently. Some wanderers pass only once, but their passing stays with us a long time. Sleep well, traveller. The cosmos continues in quiet circles and you continue within them, long after 3. Atlas had faded beyond measurable thresholds. Its presence lingered not in the sky, but in conversations whispered quietly in laboratories, in the minds of students poring over old data, in the late-night reflections of those who had followed it from discovery to disappearance. The object was gone, yet it remained the way the memory of a dim star can linger behind closed eyes long after sunrise. In the absence of new observations, the scientific community turned fully toward interpretation. Researchers revisited each fragment of evidence with a gentleness that had developed throughout the long months of watching the traveller. The early anomalies, nickel without iron carbon dioxide dominance, the forward glow, were no longer framed as puzzles to solve, but as reminders that nature is broader than our categories. The universe does not bend to our expectations, it invites us to stretch toward it. This shift was subtle but profound. In the first weeks after discovery, debates had been sharp, focused on explanation and certainty. But now, as the object receded beyond the reach of instrumentation, a softer tone prevailed. Scientists began to speak not of resolution, but of enrichment. 3I, Atlas, had expanded the edges of what felt possible, and this expansion mattered more than any single conclusion. In seminars, data from the object appeared like a quiet motif familiar, yet carrying new resonance each time it was revisited. A spectrum showing excess carbon dioxide would prompt reflections on chemistry in distant planetary nurseries. A light curve from the Mars encounter would lead to discussions about heat flow in ancient interstellar ice. The object had become a reference point, not because it was extraordinary, but because it was humbly different. Outside observatories in the stillness of night, some astronomers found themselves stepping out into the cold to look up, even though they knew the traveller was far beyond visibility. There was something grounding in that act, a simple acknowledgement that we inhabit a universe where objects older than the sun can drift close enough for us to notice them, however briefly. In a cosmos defined by scale and silence, noticing is a form of connection. Human emotion rarely enters scientific reports, but privately many observers admitted to feeling a quiet tenderness toward the object. Not personal, not possessive, but reflective. They had watched its slow brightening, its intricate chemistry, its soft departure. They had spent nights tracing its motion pixel by pixel, and now in its absence they felt a gentle space where its presence had been like the fading warmth of a chair someone has just risen from. Among philosophers of science, discussions emerged about what it means to understand something so ancient. Is understanding a data set, a model, a conclusion? Or is it the willingness to sit with ambiguity, letting it broaden rather than frustrate us? 3I Atlas seemed to encourage the latter. It was a teacher not of answers but of patience. Students newly entering the field encountered the object not as a mystery to solve but as an invitation. They read papers describing nickel lines, dust halos, faint rotational signatures, and they learned as much from the uncertainties as from the measurements. Many said they felt comforted by the idea that even experts had lived through months of not knowing. In a world hungry for immediate clarity, astronomy offers a different rhythm, one measured in decades, centuries, and the quiet humility of waiting. Occasionally, someone would bring up the alignment with the 1977 signal, not seriously just as a poetic footnote. It had become something like folklore among graduate students, a gentle myth born from coincidence. Not something to believe, but something to smile at, the way sailors speak of distant lights at sea. A small reminder that humans naturally weave meaning into the vastness surrounding them. Meanwhile, the last models of the object's orbit matured into long-term projections. 3 Atlas would continue, outward, slipping past Saturn's faint domain, past the helio sheath, past the soft boundary where solar wind thins into interstellar medium. After that, it would drift in near-perfect silence, joining the countless fragments moving between stars. Perhaps one day it would be perturbed again and wander into another system. Perhaps not. Either way, its journey would continue long after our brief chapter ended. This realization prompted a quiet meditation among those who studied it. If a single object can outlast civilizations, continents, even the lifespan of stars, what does that say about our place? Not that we are insignificant, but that we are fleeting, and there is beauty in fleeting things. Our observations, our questions, our wonder, these are temporary flashes in cosmic time, but they matter precisely because they are brief. In the final months of reflection, one theme emerged above all others: gratitude. Gratitude that we live in an era where we can detect such travellers. Gratitude that the technology exists to capture their faint signals. Gratitude that curiosity continues to guide human attention outward, even as the world grows louder and more complex. And gratitude too for the silence, for the long intervals of waiting between observations, for the quiet sky that holds more worlds than we can count, for the way the universe remains patient even when we are not. Tonight, as you imagine Three-Eye Atlas drifting into the deep, let the thoughts settle softly. Some journeys are meant only to be witnessed from afar. Some stories are meant only to pass through us briefly. Some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but to remind us of how much more there is to see. Sleep gently, traveller. The cosmos continues, and so do you, traveller. As our journey comes to its quiet close, let us settle for a moment in the soft glow of everything we've drifted through together. We've moved through data and doubt, through signals that whispered across decades, through these strange geometry of 1977 and the long breath of an object from another star. And now, as the night folds gently around us, we return to the simplest truth: the universe is still speaking, and we are still learning how to hear it. What Three Atlas truly is, no one can say, not yet. But what matters is that you are here listening, wondering, sitting with the beauty of not knowing. That quiet curiosity is the heart of science and the heart of being human. Wherever you are, whatever hour this finds you, remember that somewhere beyond your rooftop sky, an interstellar traveller still moves through our solar system, steady and silent, carrying secrets older than our sun. The mystery continues. It does not need to be solved tonight. Thank you for drifting through this with me. Rest well, observer. Stay curious. The universe will keep watch.